Hello, Jim. I am really excited. I've been wanting to spend time with you for a long time. We have a very similar interest, although you have made a life out of this specific lane, and this is God saved you for this purpose, and boy, you are so needed right now in a world that's gone absolutely crazy. So I'm grateful that you've made time to do this with our church, and I'm hoping that God uses this. My background was I wasn't a believer, and through researching religion, whether it was a God, religion, history, which Christianity, it was a very research-oriented, along with destruction in my own life that led to a crossroads because of addiction to this place where I finally I needed Jesus. Tell us a little bit about your story.
Well, I wasn't raised in an environment around anyone who was a Christian, so I didn't really have much knowledge about Christianity. And I was in Los Angeles County, where you can kind of pocket yourself in different groups where you may never ever be around somebody who. So I never had a sense of what Christianity represented. And growing up, I didn't have any friends who invited me to church or anything like that. I was working at the time in law enforcement here in Southern California. I was working on an undercover position, working robberies, and occasionally a homicide would come up. And those are the things that I got involved in. And the only Christians I bumped into were the people we were either taking to jail, and we did bump into a few of those who would say they were Christians, or a few of the officers who, to be honest with you, my coworkers were not always great at defending what they believed about Christianity, even though they were good case makers on other aspects of their professional life. But my wife was interested in going to church, so I went with her. I delayed it. We had moved into this neighborhood and in this house, and I probably waited 3 years before she finally got me to go. And when I went, the pastor that particular day, and he may have said this all the time, but on that day, what I remember him saying that was powerful for me was that he said that Jesus was the smartest man who ever lived. And I really kind of, I've always been interested in wisdom teaching. It doesn't have to be from a true character. I think you can learn things from characters on TV and in movies, right? I mean, so you can glean out those kinds of life principles from all kinds of places. And so I was willing to purchase a Bible really for the purpose of seeing what was it that he thought that Jesus said that was so smart. And that's why I first purchased the Bible. But by the time I started to investigate this, I was 35, and I had probably 8 or 9 years working as an investigator. And I knew that I was going to end up bringing that package, that skill set, into this investigation. There was no way you could do it any other way. And so a lot of what I did was examining the Gospels as eyewitness accounts to see if they stood up under the scrutiny that I would offer. Look, most of my career was spent working cold cases. Those are just unsolved murders. That's the only crime that doesn't close by statute. There's no statute of limitations on a murder. Every other case is going to close, but this will not close. And this is very similar. I typically don't have access to eyewitnesses anymore because they died years ago. My cases are like from 1972 to 1990. And so a lot of those cases, people are already dead. So I've got to go back and try to figure out, are those reports I have, and I have some of these books, I'll move this microphone. Some of these books are sitting right here of old cold cases, and they're full of supplemental reports. And I got to decide, are those reports actually reliable? This is exactly the approach I took with the Gospels. That's how I ended up becoming a Christian. I didn't have anything in my life that was driving me toward this. In other words, I had a great life, great career, great family, great marriage. Just wanted to know if this was true. And as I investigated it, I became more and more convinced that the Gospels were reporting something accurate about Jesus of Nazareth.
Well, you just said something that I think is interesting. You said you wanted to know what was true. Mm-hmm. We're going to go on a journey the next several weeks talking about, you wrote a book called God's Crime Scene, and it deals with the issue of God. You wrote another book on investigating Jesus like a cold case Christianity. And then, and others. I know you're working on some right now, but this whole concept of truth is important because we live in a world that says there is no objective truth. There is no, truth that you can rely upon. There's your truth. There's my truth. And
Right.
it's almost like you're actually not intelligent if you're not multicultural, diverse. I mean, even any claims of absolute
Sure.
truth are seen as being, uneducated, uninformed, and impossible.
Well, okay, so that's such an important thing right now. Look, just go on a little ride with me for a second. I'm going to open up something that I hopefully will share with you, just a little bit of media, because I think what's happening is the generation in which we're living right now, young people particularly, are kind of doubtful that there's anything that's really anything more than a matter of personal opinion. So you might have a belief about God, and the parents may have a belief about God, and that's working for them, but that's not for me. That's for them. I'm glad you'll hear this all the time when you present somebody with the facts of Christianity, and they'll say something like, "Well, I'm so happy for you that works for you," as if to say, "Well, it doesn't work for me." So we have to help, I think, young people and even people who live within the church understand, is there a difference between subjective truth and objective truth? What I want to do is just share with you, I try to help young people and just church understand the difference between objective and subjective. Jim, imagine this. I'm going to share a screen real quick, and you'll get a chance to see it. So I'll be off for a second while you look at this. Okay, so imagine you ask your congregation to go out and go downtown and share the truth with people who have never heard the truth. You know, we all do these one-day missions trips. So here you are on the streets, and you're going to share the truth with people. And if you've ever done any street evangelism, you kind of know how this feels. But today, I'm going to ask, you asked your congregation, you say, "Oh yeah, but today the truth we're going to share is going to be, what is your favorite dessert?" Now, I think most of us would say, "What? You want to go downtown and talk to people about their favorite dessert?" That's crazy, right? I mean, I have a favorite dessert. My favorite dessert is chocolate chip cookies. And I would make this claim: chocolate chip cookies are the best dessert. But I'm not going to go downtown and actually make a case downtown like a street evangelist for chocolate chip cookies. Why? Because you recognize that this is a matter of personal opinion, right? I, as the subject, get to decide if that claim is true. I am the subject who the chocolate chip cookies are the best dessert. This is why we call this a subjective claim. Let me show you one more thing before I hop back on the screen with you here. Now, you said this, Jim. You said, "No, we're going to go downtown and we're going to share a cure, because there are people downtown who are dying of tuberculosis and they don't even know it. And we could share the cure with them, save a lot of lives." I have tuberculosis, Jim. I caught it from a guy I arrested a number of years ago. And I'm TB positive, but I'm not TB active, so they don't treat you unless you're TB active. But there's a cure for tuberculosis. It's on a cocktail. It's made with an antibiotic called Isoniazid. That's the true way. That is true for everyone. Even if your opinion says, my opinion, I think that Tylenol will cure TB. Well, good luck with that. Your opinion will not make Tylenol cure TB. So it turns out this is not grounded in subjects like persons who get to decide if that's the cure. This is grounded in the object known as isoniazid, and that's why we call this kind of claim an objective claim. Okay? An objective claim. Now I'm going to come back out of this and stop sharing this screen for a second so I can talk to you again. Okay, so you can see there's a difference between objective claims and subjective claims, right? Objective claims are clearly the kinds of claims that are grounded in objects, not subjects. The only question is, the claims about God, are those objective or subjective? Now, one way to tell the difference is to simply ask yourself the question. Now, hang on a second. I got to take a break because my other camera now. Why is it saying the camera is busy? Okay, I'm back on again. Okay, now we have to make a decision about whether or not God's existence is an objective claim or a subjective claim. Now, one way to tell the difference, Jim, is simple. Ask yourself the question: can your opinion change it? make it so or make it not so. And so I ask this question all the time. If I said, hey, my car is white, is that an objective claim or a subjective claim? Well, ask yourself the question. Can my opinion make it a different color? Can I say, well, my opinion is blue, and now it's blue? No. Since your subjective opinion cannot affect it, it's clearly an objective claim. The other thing about objective claims, Jim, is that objective claims can be tested. You can go out and verify if my car is white. Okay, that's the difference. So ask yourself the question then, okay, the claim that God exists, is that an objective claim or a subjective claim? Well, opinion make God exist if he doesn't? No. Can my opinion keep God from existing if he does? No. That's an objective claim about reality, God's existence. And my opinion really has no impact on whether or not God exists. Now, why is that important? Because you know that you're not going to go downtown to make a case and actually confront people about your preference for cookies. But you will go downtown and make a case for Isoniazid. And as a matter of fact, you ought to be making a case. Because if someone tells you, no, I'm taking NyQuil, and in my opinion, this is making me feel better, I'm going to be okay, I would hope you would argue with that person to save their life, that Isoniazid. It turns out that objective claims are the kinds of claims we ought to be talking about. So the only question is, why are we treating these claims about God as though they're just subjective opinions? You know, you move in next to somebody who's a Mormon and they're really nice people, and they actually, you know, are the first people to greet us when we came into this neighborhood. And why should I want to go over there and shake that tree? That's close enough, right? Really? So are you treating the gospel like a cookie instead of a cure? Where you think that perhaps, you know, this is a matter of personal opinion and they've got their opinion and they're nice people? Or is this the kind of thing? Now, one more thing I want to say about this. It's possible to have a false objective claim. What I mean is I could say, my white car out there can fly me to the moon. Well, that's not true. But it's still an objective claim. The claim that my car can fly to the moon is an objective claim about my car, although it is objectively false. In other words, my opinion can't make my car fly to the moon if it can't. And my opinion can't keep the car from flying to the moon if it can. That's an objective claim about the car, but it's a false objective claim. This reveals one more thing that's true about objective claims, and here it is. It turns out that the only thing that's left to do once you determine if a claim is objective rather than subjective is determine if it's true or false. Now, if you said, Jim, you know, my favorite dessert is chocolate chip cookies, I can't falsify that. I can't say, no, it's not. You're like, yeah, it is, because I get to decide. I'm the subject who gets to decide. So you can't falsify or verify subjective claims the same way you can objective claims. And once you discover that the claim that God exists is an objective claim, all that's left to do is to discover if it's true or false. It could very easily be a false objective claim, the same way my saying that my car can fly to the moon is a false objective claim. But in any case, this is the kind of thing we need to actually talk about. And that's why I think for young people, we have to help them to see that, yeah, look, I'm not saying there are no subjective opinions. I get it. We all have opinions. But what claims about God are not in that category. Claims about God are in the objective category that require us to investigate them to see if they're true or false. And once we discover that, we ought to be in conversation with others, because this is like the cure for what's killing us, right? It's the cure for what's killing us spiritually. So I think it is important for us to talk about and make a distinction between subjective claims and objective claims. Because if there is no objective truth, then there is no objective truth about God. And before I'm going to have a conversation about God, I want to establish that foundation first.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I noticed on my journey is people accept, in fact, they pride themselves on this sort of scientific, objective truth finding. There are actual laws of nature, whether it's gravity, whether it's, you name it. And we claim that there is objective truth there. the legal system. If there isn't an objective truth, then how do you ever, take someone to court? How do you ever put someone in jail? How do you test? You have tests to decide whether or not this is beyond a reasonable doubt based on objective evidence.
Yeah.
And so we say no. We try to find the truth about whether somebody did something or not, or whether, as you said, there's a cure for COVID-19 right now. They're trying to find an objective cure for COVID-19. Why do we believe that the world itself, there are standards, there are objective truths everywhere else except in the spiritual realm?
Well, and I think we have to be careful that we haven't become so anti-evidential as Christians that we are just kind of turned off our mind this way. I will tell you, one way to kind of back into this is to ask the opposite question. All right, so let's take a look at the kinds of claims. Let me just run by you a couple of claims about truth that I'm sure you've probably talked about with your congregation, but I want to kind of give them to you in a new way. Because I think there are a couple of things, especially young people, especially in the academy and the university, in the culture in general. The culture is dominated by thinkers who are starting to take these kinds of positions. So I'm going to, one more time.
Which I would say means they're not really thinkers.
Well, it means what they would basically do is they take a position and they don't challenge it.
Right.
So the idea of critical thinking, right, that used to be something we would always include in a curriculum for any university. Well, the secular universities have actually gone back and started surveying graduates, and they realize they haven't been doing a great job. They might just teach subjects, but the way they're teaching this subject doesn't necessarily require us to think critically. So let me just give you some of the tools, the two tools that I think will help Christians think clearly about any claim made in culture, including claims about God. And I'm going to hop on the screen here again with you real quick to do that. So hang on. You got to give me a second just to get this back up and running here. Okay, so I want to show you what I call a couple of lies that are told about truth that I think are pretty critical. And if we can just overcome these lies about truth, I'm going to share this screen again. So here we go. There we go. And I'm going to share it. So here we go. The first one is this one right here. I don't know if you can get this off the screen. Okay. Is that there's no objective truth at all. There is no. And you'll see sometimes people will try to twist the teaching of, or the statements of someone like an Einstein, Albert Einstein. If he says something like this, truth is what stands the test of experience. I know for a fact that Albert Einstein believed in objective truth, but people can twist this and say, well, yeah, but his experience and your experience is different than my experience. So your truth will be different than my truth. Let me show you I think the quintessential subjective truth claim that denies objective truth. Believe nothing just because a so-called wise person said it. Believe nothing just because a belief is generally held. Believe nothing just because it's said in some ancient book. And believe nothing just because it's said to be of divine origin. Doesn't this all sound like a conversation about Christianity? Believe nothing just because someone else believes it. Believe only what you yourself test and judge to be true. Wow, that means that every individual gets to judge what is true. This is subjectivism at its highest peak. And this was said by Buddha. Now, how do we know that Buddha said this? Well, because it's written in an ancient book, allegedly divine origin, that's accepted by millions of people. Do you see the problem here? Buddha wants to believe this, but his claim violates what he wants us to do. If we cannot believe anything that's allegedly of divine origin from antiquity that's accepted by millions of people, then why should we believe this? Because it fits in all those categories. So here's the first critical thinking tool I want to pass along, and it's the first lie about truth, is that we ask this question: does it violate its own rules? We often will call this kind of thing either a road runner, because, the old road runner tactic where he's being chased by the coyote and he falls off the cliff, but I call it a suicide tactic, which Greg Koukl also calls it this. It's that it cannot stand on its own 2 feet. If somebody asked you, or said to you, there's no objective truth, you're going to ask a simple question: is that objectively true? Because if that's objectively true, then there's at least one objective truth. And if there's objective truth number one, then we cannot say there's no objective truth. Do you see the problem? It's kind of like this. This is one of my favorite objective, contradiction in terms here. Nothing is written in stone. Written in stone. Do you see how it's self-refuting? These are called self-refuting statements. One I think is kind of funny. Dry Creek Water Park. These are statements that I always say kind of shoot themselves in the face. This is cop lingo, as I'm sure you know. Let me give you one more, and then I'll kind of screen with you here. And that's that, okay, even if truth is out there, objective truth exists, well, nobody can really be so arrogant as to think they could know it. We're finite creatures. We cannot know truth with any certainty. And you'll see that atheists will kind of put it this way: believe those who are seeking the truth, but doubt those who find it. Or, as I love, this is my favorite from Molly Ivins, she says, I believe that ignorance is the root of all evil and that no one knows the truth. Well, do you see the self-refuting problem here? She clearly, if she knows the truth, she can't make a claim about truth. So if someone said to you, truth cannot be known, you're simply going to ask the question, do you know if that's true? Because if you know that's true, then apparently truth can be known. But if truth cannot be known, you can't know if truth can't be known. It's self-refuting, kind of like this Death Valley Health Center, or my favorite, which is this one: illiterate, write for free help. Okay, some of you will get that later, and we can go back and ask Jim about that later. Again, it's kind of like you're sitting on the wrong side of the saw as you're sawing that limb, okay? And this is the problem when I come back out of this real quick. This is the problem, I think, with all claims about truth, that if we're not careful, we will fall for this. We'll fall for it because these kinds of claims are often talked about when it comes to God. Well, there is no objective truth about God. Well, corner that. Ask the question. Are you saying there's just no way to know, or there's no objective claims, period, or that claims about God don't fall in the objective category? Well, you already know how to make the case for that now, because you know if your opinion cannot speak to this, if your opinion can't make it so, or make it not so, it clearly falls into that objective category. And claims about God fall into that objective category. It could be objectively false, but it is objective. And secondly, then, okay, but no one can really know with any certainty if God exists. Well, that's really a skepticism about whether any truth can be known with any certainty. Now, remember, Jim, I work in cases where the standard of proof is not beyond a possible doubt, because if it was, you could never prove anything. My standard of proof in criminal trials, the heaviest criminal trials that involve either life or death sentences, that standard is called beyond a reasonable doubt. And compared to possible doubt, reasonable doubt is much lower. Because it turns out, we'll tell jurors all the time, I cannot answer every question that you have in this trial. Are you the kind of person, and we do this in the voir dire process, we'll ask jurors, are you the kind of person who needs every question answered before you can render a verdict? Yeah, I think I can't have lingering doubts. Well, then you can't be on our jury. It's really pretty simple, because there's no way I can answer every question. I had cases where I could tell you, I can make a case that he killed her, but I can't tell you what he did with her body, because we never found the body. I can't tell you how he moved the body, how he did it in the house with two other people there at the same time and nobody even heard it, and then how he moved the car and got back to, I can't answer all these big questions. And we'll still find that guy guilty. And by the way, that guy ultimately confessed after he was convicted. But at the time we convicted him, there were large unanswered questions. If you're sitting out there thinking, well, look, I don't know that I could ever become a Christ follower or believe in God's existence because I have questions that I don't know that I could ever answer with the level of certainty that I was hoping for. Really, what do you think you know right now beyond a possible doubt? I'm going to suggest you don't know anything beyond a possible doubt right now. You think you do, but you don't. I mean, people get out in the car every day. They walk out to their car. Somebody in America is going to walk out to their car, put their key in the ignition, turn the ignition. That car is going to blow up in the driveway. That happens all the time. It's possible. But you're not going to stop tomorrow driving your car, because that standard beyond a possible doubt is not an effective. You can't live by it. You'd be paralyzed in fear. Instead, what you're going to do is you're going to go out and operate under the standard of reasonable doubt. It's not reasonable that that's going to happen to you today. The odds are highly against it. And this is what we all do this every day. Right now, we've been dealing with the coronavirus this year, and it's all about, well, what is possible? And listen, it's possible all of us could get it. It's possible all of us could die from it. But that's not reasonable. And we have to operate on the level of reasonable. We're just going to have to figure out where that is statistically. We're still trying to figure that out. But my point is, why would we hold such a standard when it comes to God's existence that I have to be beyond any possible doubt when you don't hold that standard for anything else in your life?
Yeah, well, you think about all the things that we accept in life, and that we didn't see. We didn't see somebody land on the moon. We didn't see, some of us have never seen Iceland. You could say, well, I've seen it on a movie. Oh, everything in a movie is true.
Right.
You can come to this place where you doubt every single thing, and it's not a possible way for you to live. And secondly, you can't build if the saying in history, which is my background. If you don't remember history, you're doomed to repeat it, right? If you can't believe anything that happened, you can't build knowledge based on somebody else's experiences. You can't. It's scientifically. If we didn't accept some things as fact that had been handed down to us, then we don't have a place to start. So it's like we're always starting at base one, and we can't build any sort of information to build a computer,
Right.
or to build whatever. And it's just not a way to live. Now, again, though, I think there are many claims. It's funny how these folks who claim there is no God, they have to answer the question, we'll get into this next time. How does something come from nothing? Where did
Right.
it come from?
Right.
They claim to objectively know that evolution, that the universe is a closed system. There's nothing outside of it. It's all that ever was, which really gets blown up when we start talking about the Big Bang theory and the evidence for that. So they're making a faith claim that has ramifications.
Exactly. Everyone holds claims for which they have less than perfect evidence. That's how I usually put it. Everyone. And as an atheist, I had lots of claims I held and unanswered questions I was willing to just suspend, because I knew that you can't answer every question. And even people who trust in the sciences will say, well, yeah, there's some things that we haven't been able to answer yet with sciences, yet they hold on to their claims with less than perfect evidence. And so that's why I just want to encourage people, if you think you have, look, the jury instruction from judges in California is very clear when it comes to reasonable doubt as a standard. We talk about that standard, and judges will tell jurors that standard is there because I can level an imaginary or possible doubt against anything you believe. And that's exactly right. And so what we have to do is ask ourselves, well, look, at some point we recognize that every one of us believes something on the basis of an evidence trail, and then that evidence trail stops short of a conclusion. So even if you said, oh, I hold to the standard cosmological model that scientists hold to for the universe, fine. That's an evidence trail that they will even tell you stops short of a conclusion. And I have to make an inference from the end of the evidence trail. Same is true here. God's existence, whether Christianity is true. I'm going to show you enough evidence, I think, that gets you to a very, very long trail that still requires a verdict. And by the way, this is why when the jury goes out, we still hope they're going to come back with the same verdict, but they don't always come back with the same verdict, even though they all saw the same evidence. They are being walked to the end of an evidence trail, and then we're asking them to step across the gap that we call rendering a verdict. Same thing here. We're going to talk about truth, God's existence, the claims about Christianity. We're going to walk you down an evidence trail. At the end of this trail, that we're going to ask you to render a verdict, to make the most reasonable inference from evidence. And that's what we all do. And by the way, we're not the only ones who do this as Christians. Everyone who holds any view of the world, if they're thoughtful about it, they're doing the same thing. So what we want to do is we want to join that thoughtful group of people.
That's what we're actually asking people to do through this series, is to go, if you're the jury and we give you evidence, you have to make a decision. Now, we're going to talk about, materialists. They come with preconceived ideas. They come with the idea that there are some things that are not possible beforehand. Right. So if you start with this conclusion already, for instance, evolutionists who start with the macroevolutionists who start with the concept of there is nothing outside of the universe. Therefore, we will accept things we haven't seen or can't reproduce evidentially because there are no other options. We have to find, and then what they do is at this point they go, well, okay, granted, we haven't found an answer yet, but someday,
yeah, we will. Right. Yeah, keep in mind, if we did that as Christians, if we said, hey, I can't answer that question, but someday God will tell me, we're going to be accused of just jumping to the God hypothesis because we don't understand how to answer it. But the same thing happens in reverse. We don't have an answer for this. As a matter of fact, every evidential trail as a scientist I've tried to maybe explain the origin of life, they all dead end. But someday we hope, we know that science will tell us. That, okay, then fine. Then make a verdict right now for God, and then you can change your mind later. Because right now, the best, we'll talk about that later. But let me just, I know we're getting short on time for this week, but I want to just give me one more tool that I think will help us in the next 2 weeks. And that is that at some point, Jim, we have to define for people that what do we mean when we say truth? So I just want to give you the classic definitions that are offered in the academy that don't work. So hang on a second. I'm going to do the same thing again. I'm going to go to my, I'm going to slip over here. And I'm just going to talk about what do we mean by truth? Hang on a second. This is a break in our video because for some reason my phone continues to want to stop recording the secondary camera. Okay, so I'll start that again. So what I want to do is I want to just jump in real quick and go to my screen again and talk about a way to define truth, because I think it's going to be so important. So here I'm going to share this screen, and I'm going to share this one right here. Good. Okay. So what is truth? What do we mean by truth? How do we define it? Well, one of the ways the academy tries to define it is they'll say something that's it's kind of known as the pragmatic theory of truth. And the idea is that truth is basically whatever works. And this is known as pragmatism philosophically. And this pragmatic theory of truth just says, hey, if it works, now you can see why people might like this, because how do we know that Isoniazid is the cure for TB? Well, we tried a bunch of other stuff that didn't work. This seems to work, so that we know because it works, it is the true cure. But this will not get you to every form of truth. And we got to be careful about this. Look, I'm now 58. You have a lot of retired police officers in your state, and we retire early in California. Why? Because the average life expectancy for retired California police officers is the high 50s. So I think about it all the time. Death is not working for me, okay? Sorry. I don't think pragmatism is going to tell me much about my notions of death. And by the way, Jim, have you ever told a successful lie? I have. My wife tells me a successful lie nearly every day when I ask her if my hair is falling out. And she'll say, no, you have all kinds of hair. Yeah, right. That's a lie, okay? But it sure makes me feel good. It's successful. That does not make it true, though. Pragmatism has limits, and they know that. So here's another theory that's often offered, and that's just called empiricism. The truth is what you can discover with your senses, your five senses. And sometimes, like you said, science is the king of all. You'll hear people say it like this: I can only trust what can be discovered with science. Well, I don't know if you see this or not, but this is also a self-refuting statement. Because if someone said this to me, I'm going to say, that's a suicide statement, because I know at least one thing that you trust as true, although you cannot test it in the laboratory, and that is that you can only trust what you can discover with science. That's not a scientific conclusion. That is a philosophical premise that you began with. You had to accept that philosophically before you could even do science. Okay, but that doesn't make it true. You can't test that in the laboratory. So they also have a third theory of truth, and that is what's known as emotivism. Emotivism. And it's basically truth is what you feel. And a lot of people in the church, I will tell you, fall into this category. They know that God exists because they feel it in some way. They have a sensory perception of it in some way. Emotionally, they're attached to the idea. But emotivism has limits. I mean, lots of people have irrational fears. I had a partner that was a huge man, and he had an unbelievable irrational fear of even the smallest garden spider. So when he came into detectives, you know what we did every weekend? We just collected garden spiders and brought them back in Tupperware and released them in his desk. It's we loved to see this guy scream like a baby, okay, because he was so afraid of spiders.
I like you.
Yeah, it was awesome, right?
That's my love language right there.
And by the way, paper clips, there are certain truth claims about paper clips based on tensile strength and shape and how you use them. And your emotions are pretty much voiceless when it comes to your claims about paper clips. I'm not emotional about paper clips. So when I say truth's a relationship, what I'm talking about is this correspondence between what you believe is true and what really is. So if you believe there's a dog in your house, and then you go in the house because you believe that while you're on the outside, and then you open the door and go in your house and there really is a dog in your house, now you know that you have a one-to-one relationship. You believe something and you went inside and discovered it really is that way. And so that's why I say people have beliefs about God. But the question is, are our beliefs about God equal to what really is? We'll talk about that next week. And also you have beliefs about the Bible. But then the question becomes, are your beliefs about the Bible equal to what really is true? And so that, for me, was what started me on this journey. And I'm going to snap out of this screen here for a second. So for me, what it came down to, Jim, was I just needed to know. I knew what the nature of truth was. And I knew from working criminal trials that we have to walk jurors through this. Like you said, if everyone on the jury really only embraced and accepted the subjective notions of truth, well, then it's really going to be hard to render a verdict, because we're trying to argue for something that happened in the past objectively, not a matter of personal opinion. My opinion cannot make it so. All I can do is figure out from the evidence if that thing happened or not. And if I have an opinion that, you know what, I like guys who have that color hair and that suspect has that color hair, I can't have that kind of thinking in our jurors, right? We have to have jurors that are objective about the evidence. So I already knew that. But then the question became, well, what is the theory of truth that most of us operate under? And what are the lies that we have bought about truth? And once you can kind of clear that out, you have a firm foundation, I think, to start to discuss whether or not God exists and whether or not Christianity is true.
That's really good. I'm excited to go on this journey, and I think this is really good because we have a lot of people that are trying to figure out what they believe in our church. They have friends, family that are trying to figure out what they believe and what's true and what isn't. And I'm excited to challenge people to become a juror, to think clearly, objectively about this Jesus that we talk about. We're celebrating, we just got done celebrating for Easter.
Right.
And so I'm excited to go through this with you. Thanks so much, Jim, for today, and look forward to next week.
Thanks, buddy. I'm looking forward to it too.